Do we know how to introduce AI into classrooms in a way that is effective and safe and responsible? We know some aspects of it, but lots of it, a center like this exists in order to figure it out. And so it creates a node that is much more than just the delivery of training. It's a node for discovery, for inventing the future together. And to me, that's what's so exciting about it.
If you would like to listen to or download any or all of Power at Work's blogcasts in podcast form, they are available for streaming and download on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Overcast. Just search Power at Work on any podcast platform and enjoy all of Power at Work's podcasts. While you're there, two things we would like you to do. First, subscribe, and that way you won't miss any Power at Work podcasts. Second, please give Power at Work a 5-star rating, a like, a love, whatever is the tool that your podcast provider gives you. It helps others who care about workers and worker power to find Power at Work's content. They will be grateful, and so will we. Hello, powerful people, and welcome back to Power at Work. My name is Seth Harris from the Burns Center for Social Change, and welcome to this Power at Work blogcast about a new and some would say surprising effort by the American Federation of Teachers and its largest local affiliate in cooperation with 3 of the leading American artificial intelligence companies to train elementary and secondary school teachers and kindergarten teachers and perhaps higher education teachers to use AI in their work. Today, I'll talk with the president of the AFT and a venture capitalist, educator, and activist who helped put together this epic and important arrangement. We'll talk about how and why the deal came together. We'll talk about what the union and companies hope to accomplish by training school teachers in the use of AI. We'll discuss how the union might try to address AI through collective bargaining over artificial intelligence, and we'll discuss whether this arrangement between a very large teachers union and some very large companies is getting any pushback from local leaders, members, other unions, or anyone else. Are you looking for more labor radio shows and podcasts? Well, look no further. Go to the Labor Radio Podcast Network. The network connects more than 200 radio shows and podcasts. To find more great labor content, go to www.laborradionetwork.org. Power at Work is there. You should be too. Today, we're talking about teachers, teachers' unions, and artificial intelligence in the classroom. Our starting point is a new partnership announced on July 8th of this year that the American Federation of Teachers and its largest local affiliate, the United Federation of Teachers in New York City, has partnered with Microsoft, OpenAI, and Anthropic to launch the National Academy of AI Instruction. According to the AFT, the National Academy will be a $23 million initiative to provide access to free AI training and curriculum for all 1.8 million members of the AFT, starting with its members who teach in kindergarten programs and elementary and secondary schools, and I suspect higher education as well. In the words of the AFT press release announcing the partnership, its purpose is, quote, to transform how artificial intelligence is taught and integrated into classrooms across the United States. Now, my view is that transformative is exactly the right word for this partnership, for education, for students, for teachers, for the companies that are involved, for our economy, for our society. Why do I say that? I've told you a number of times here on Power at Work that I spend a lot of my time in conversations about workforce development. And that means skills needs, skills training, knowledge acquisition to help workers to succeed in the labor market and also in their jobs. These are discussions about apprenticeships and reskilling incumbent employees and retraining dislocated workers and ensuring that those who are entering the labor market, whether it's justice-involved individuals or people who've left to care for a loved one, or just people entering the labor market because they've been unable to find work and have never really succeeded in attaching to the labor market. Making sure that all of those programs and all of that, the efforts associated with them provide workers with the skills that they need. That's what it's all about. Right now, the most commonly discussed topic in workforce development is artificial intelligence, bar none. Period. AI is the leading topic right now in workforce development. And AI is certainly going to disrupt millions of jobs and require workers to think differently about the skills that they need and their futures in numerous industries. Although, let's be honest, even though it seems like it's been years and years and years and years, it's still early days. AI is still a very young technology, and we really don't know what all of its effects are going to be for workers, for the labor market, for employers, for workplaces. But the biggest question right now is, how can we ensure that workers will be able to use AI in whatever jobs they occupy over the course of their careers? Well, here you go. Teachers, unions taking the lead with technology partners to answer that question. Hundreds of thousands of teachers and para-educators learning from a new national academy how to use AI in their jobs and teach AI if they decide to use it in this way, and we'll hear more about that in the blogcast, to their students, or at least to have AI in the background of the lessons that they teach to their students. Millions of students, from pre-K toddlers to adults in 2-year and 4-year colleges, potentially learning about AI or being exposed to AI by those teachers. Let me just say the National Academy is not a panacea for AI education, workforce development, or anything. I've come across very few panaceas in my life. This is not a panacea. But it's a very important step forward, in my humble opinion. Fortunately, we are bringing you two prominent guests who can dive into the details of the partnership and the motivations behind it. Randi Weingarten has been the American Federation of Teachers president for 17 years, after serving for 11 years as the president of the United Federation of Teachers in New York City, which is the AFT's local that represents New York City teachers and paraeducators, home child care workers, and others, who eventually are also going to benefit from the National Academy. They're starting with the educators. Roy Bahat is the head of Bloomberg Beta, which is an early-stage venture capital firm that invests in startups that make work better. Roy also chairs the Aspen Business Roundtable on Organized Labor and served as a commissioner on the California Governor's Future of Work Commission. And he wanted to make sure that I told you that he is also a teacher. He is a professor at the business school at the University of California, Berkeley. He'll say during the blogcast he teaches one course, but that's enough for him also to be an AFT union member. He very proudly showed me his AFT card. Let me say, I'm also an AFT member. I don't have a card. I don't know why I didn't get a card. I got to ask for a card. I had the president of the American Association of University Professors on. I didn't ask him for my card. My mistake. Roy was smart enough to get himself a union card. So we have a union president and a union card-carrying venture capitalist at one of the largest venture capital firms in the United States to talk with you about education and artificial intelligence. President Randi Weingarten and Roy Bahat are our guests. You are our audience. Here's our conversation. Enjoy. Randi and Roy, thank you so very much for being here on Power at Work, and congratulations on this terrific announcement that we're going to be talking about in just a minute. So thanks for being with us.
Of course.
So, Randi, I have to say this partnership was a real surprise for a lot of people. Some folks, particularly in the pundit class, the not necessarily favorable to labor class, particularly, expect unions to resist any kind of technology, right? Sort of modern day Luddites, anything that might affect workers, cause workers to face job displacement, disrupt workers' lives. They think the union's answer is going to be no, and then they'll bargain from there. But here you are, the AFT and the UFT, partnering with leading technology companies in order to train your members how to use that new technology. So tell us a little bit about how this partnership came together. Whose idea was it? What was the impetus for you to do it? And what were some of the discussions you had with the companies about what the goal was here?
Well, I'm really so thank you, Seth, for doing this. And I'm really glad that Roy is that you have both Roy and myself on here. And think about ideas like Saturn. Think about the fact that that Al Shanker, Sandy Feldman, myself, my predecessors in the UFT and in the AFT, we all have focused on how we improve society. I mean, as important, and frankly, it is really important to fight for teachers and to fight for the supports they need. But teachers want, in the main, what children need. And our union, over the course of since our inception in 1916, but particularly under Al and Sandy's leadership, Ed McElroy as well, we believe that our jobs are to improve society and to help ensure that workers see and feel a better life is possible. So if you think about it that way, in terms of the macro, not the micro, then you get a choice every time there is a major Teutonic shift. You get to choose. Do you basically um, uh, fight it, or do you try to figure out how to deal with the challenge? And I'm not saying that just say no is not a answer. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's a legitimate one. But in a shift that is as transformational as the printing press in terms of the shift in society. And given that this last technological shift of social media, we did such, as a society, such a pathetically poor job. Essentially, so with the radio and with TV, we actually try to stop misinformation and disinformation and try to create some real legacy media, some real ways of it not uh, undermining, pluralism. And I'm talking about the indemnification clauses in particular that social media companies got. So they basically could, could make as much money as they wanted, have people say as many horrible things, and they took no responsibility. We are starting to see the same thing happen in terms of, despite the Biden attempt and Chuck Schumer's attempt to get reasonable regulations on privacy, on security, on safeguarding data, and on disinformation, it completely failed. And the tech companies are completely ascendant right now with the Trump administration. I'm throwing all of this out because all of these things are inconvenient truths that basically say if you just say no and you just hide and you just say, "Oh, we're going after it. We're not doing it," then it runs you over. And we just made the decision that not that we're not going to be run over. So that was our decision. But secondly, people like Roy, who's very farsighted about all of this stuff. I'm not talking about your eyesight, Roy. I'm talking about just, but thinking about, so Roy is a member and he also works, in the tech industry. Yes, I love that. And so Roy and we were talking one day at a event, And he was saying, why are the teacher unions, why are you not doing what the carpenters are doing, what the culinary union is doing? Why are you not the best you can be at training? And I'm like, well, we have done that with the teacher centers and other types of things, but he was right. And this is new technology. And so we said, okay, let's try it. Let's do something. And, I had a fantastic staffer, and the two of them, and I felt like I was sometimes like peering in to these innovative geniuses. And we went to the companies. It's not like, and we didn't go to all of them. There's several of them we wouldn't work with. Like, if you're not going to work with people, if you don't believe in basic humanity, if you're undermining unions at all times, we're not going to work with you. And so it was us who went to them to say, let's do this. And, they have there's clear benefits to a Microsoft or to an OpenAI, and go in wide, eyes wide open. And that's how it started.
Yeah, that's a great story. And Roy, I want to pick up on where Randy left off. I don't think it's hard to see how the companies benefit from this partnership. Basically, teachers and others are going to be trained to teach students about how to use their products. And since one of the biggest challenges for any technology.
Wait. Seth, let me just
Oh, I'm
say,
sorry. Clarifying. No, go ahead.
I
I
want to
was going to jump in
clarify.
on that too.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry. Teachers, and look, teachers, the key is how teachers use these tools. Whether or not teachers, students are using these tools, that's another question.
Oh, I
And in
see.
some places, yes, in some places, no. But I just wanted to be very careful about that question. It's
Yeah, no,
not
I think
like
that's
it's not like Google Classroom, where, all of a sudden Google gets all this information about all these students, and on and on and on. We are not working with Google. We could, but it is really a matter of what we have said to the companies is that, maybe a school district makes that decision about the use of products in classrooms. Maybe teachers make that decision, but that is separate and apart from the efficaciousness. See, I'm looking at Roy because, if you asked me this question 8 months ago, I would never have been able to answer it. So Roy and Rob Weil are part of my teachers. And but it's teachers having to have the power and the knowledge to start making some of those decisions. But it's still in the tech company's benefit, because if they know something, it's different than if they don't know something. Sorry, Roy, I didn't mean to.
No, not at all. I mean, the thing I was going to jump in on there to say is, as a matter of principle, it struck me as very important in hearing about AFT and UFT's plans that they have freedom to work with teachers on whatever tools teachers want to use, because in reality, you also can't really control that. People are going to they're going to find stuff on their own. And that's a thing about independent professionals, is they'll use the things their school district or employer wants, but they'll also innovate and experiment. It's important to do that. And so let me offer one more perspective, which is, so I come at this, yes, I'm an AFT member, but I teach one unit class at Berkeley. So let's not overstate the case. I live in the tech industry. Our firm was the first venture capital firm to invest in AI. So we've been doing that since 2014. And if you think from the perspective of I'll use the business word of an industry, but education's not an industry. Let's call it a sector of human life. And let's say you have some new and emergent technology. You've got the internet or social media, or in this case, AI. Who is the party that has the best ability to speak for that sector as a whole? And one of the things that struck me about other union training efforts, and there are many across the country. I mean, I remember going to the operating engineers training facility outside of Houston. And one of the things that really struck me was that it isn't any one company that has the ability to speak for the sector as a whole. It isn't the government that has the ability to speak for the sector as a whole. It is really, when organized labor is strong in a sector, only organized labor can be the convening party. And so in education, And, I mentioned this to Randy, I mentioned this to many other union leaders and said, hey, do you want to get your members at the forefront of this thing and figure out what to do about it? And I think the thing that was, I'm not going to too much, burn Randy's ears with her here, but in addition to the role that AFT and UFT play, because it's really critical to do this in New York.
Exactly.
There's also the fact of having productive relationships with the companies. And productive relationships don't mean do what the companies want. It means a partnership. And good partnerships only come when two equals come to the table. Either one has the ability to walk away. Each one has power. And so the AFL-CIO had also been building for a long time this relationship with Microsoft, driven in part by their declaration of a form of neutrality toward labor organizing. And AFT had then expanded on that relationship, particularly in the domain of education. And so this thing came together in record time, not because it was some revolutionary idea, but because the union and the companies had taken risks to come together and build a productive working relationship. And that's a model I'd love to see exist in plenty of other domains. It's rare. It happens. It happens sometimes in healthcare. We see it. It happens in many industries sometimes, but we need much more of that.
Right. So, Laura, let me continue on that a little bit, because the companies, and I'm not asking you to speak for the companies, and I know you're not going to want to do that, but yes, there's a commercial benefit for them, but also there is this sort of tug of war that's going on in the tech world, in Silicon Valley and beyond. It's not all in Silicon Valley. There are some folks who are selling AI as, hey, this is a way to cut costs. This is a way to increase productivity, lay off workers. This is the new robotics, everybody. They're not using exactly that language, but a version of that. But then there are some folks, and I think these companies are illustrations of that. And I've had a little bit of dealings with OpenAI, so I have a sense of how they talk about these things. I don't really know a lot about how they do business, but I know how they talk about these things, where they're really trying to establish that AI can be used for good. And so how much of this is a part of that tug of war within tech world about AI can be a tool for good, AI can be a tool for cutting costs and increasing profits?
I don't know that it is a tug of war. So here's the way I'd describe it. First of all, while from the outside, it's easy to look and say, wow, what a magnificent commercial benefit to these companies. I can say from having been in companies' shoes many times, it is not obvious. Like if you wanted to make a case that there's a return on investment for this, you got to wave your hands a lot. So, and the point I'm making in that is that I do think the companies, Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic, and maybe others will join too, deserve credit for doing something where the benefits to them may be real. Obviously, companies do things because they think it benefits them. I'm not trying to say they're doing this as altruism, but it's not obvious. It requires faith and it requires an ability to trust in a partner. And, the way I'd put it about the tug of war is it's easy from the outside to look and say AI for good, AI for evil, which one's going to win? The reality is it's not that simple. I mean, any technology is both simultaneously in the same uses. The internet, the printing press, is the internet good or bad? It's not a tug of war. It's human life. It's profound. I mean, when unions push back on companies, is that good or bad? The answer is it depends. It can sometimes be both. Same thing for companies. So I don't want to oversimplify this into a battle of good versus evil. I think that this is smart parties coming together to do what's right in an effective way. And to me, the two words that actually most characterize the thing, I've already talked about trust and whatever, are speed. This is something unfolding fast. You could have imagined the plan for this taking years to come together. Instead, from first idea to opening the center, I want to say is going to be less than 12 months. And so speed is one really important thing. And the second is the future. And it takes...
Actually, Roy.
Yeah.
7
months, even faster. Faster.
I mean, it was 7.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And
maybe
so
6.
Speed is a big part of it, and that's just really rare. And the other word is future, which is, to me, the powerful thing about this orientation is it just faces the future head on. Do we know how to introduce AI into classrooms in a way that is effective and safe and responsible? We know some aspects of it, but lots of it, a center like this exists in order to figure it out. And so it creates a node that is much more than just the delivery of training. It's a node for discovery, for inventing the future together. And to me, that's what's so exciting about it.
Right.
let me actually make a like one of the things that have happened, and what and why. I just want to reiterate two things that Roy said with a story. One, how important it is to have a local partner that has direct relationships. You know, the National Union, we are a federation of about 3,500 locals. To have a local partner that's in real partnership with the National Union. Yes, it is my home local. Yes, it is the largest local of the AFT. It may be the largest local union in the world, and it has a lot of capacity. But it means that this is a really important relationship for the local, not just for the national. And it creates a fuel that's really important and a motivation that's really important. So when Roy says UFT and AFT, UFT is a full partner here. And it's really important. It's also really important to be place-based, to not do everything when it comes to technology in a virtual way. We have to be place-based. But the second piece, this is this how
That's
this
another
is
technology company dialing up,
yeah,
Randy, trying to get in on the
exactly.
deal. That's my guess.
Exactly. It might be, but this is what's so remarkable about how dynamic this is. Over the course of these few months, when you say good, bad, there are value systems, values we have to protect for and against. And that's why we have put out a whole bunch of guardrails about what we want government to do, what we want these companies to do, some of which they've done, most of which they haven't. And but in looking at, in rejecting the binary, and in trying to say, what can, uh, even without that, what are the things we can do? In the last month, teachers of special needs kids have actually come up with this remarkably amazing way of using ChatGPT, or Claude or Copilot, whichever one wants to think about, as Roy is laughing and smiling.
No, only just
It
that it doesn't surprise me. It's less about which one they use and more about I love hearing when these surprising cases emerge. So I'm just ready
exact
for the
so
rest of the story.
so this is so in a classroom with special needs kids, you may have a teacher, a para, maybe two assistant teachers. But you really have to do one-on-one work, if you're talking about literacy, in some of these with kids. But if you have 12 kids and you have two adults, it's really hard to do read alouds at that moment with each child. Like, it's mathematically impossible. So some teachers have figured out how to use the technology, so the technology helps do the read aloud with a young person, so that you're doing the read aloud with each of the kids in the same class at the same time. That was something that I would not have envisioned. Michael, the president of UFT, would not have envisioned. And he told me the story a few weeks after, because in our first training with teachers in July, there was a couple of special needs teachers that said, okay, why don't we try this? And in the training that we did, which, expert teachers who are doing training from the teacher centers that I just talked about, and our, AFT members, UFT members, with the technologists from OpenAI and from Microsoft. Microsoft is our lead partner, from Anthropic, who is our partner as well. They all of a sudden they're like, okay, we can do this. And in the symposium that we had this year, the level of creativity of the what about, not just what are the safeguards, but you started hearing the what about. And when you see teachers and these technology people from the company saying, okay, let's try this, let's see this, let's so clearly it's going to help them in marketing. But the key here is it's going to change tools in a way that helps teaching and learning. That's the alchemy that we're looking for. And that's the alchemy that has been really helpful. And you know, as I said, it's really this special ed example just, you know, just knocked me over. It was amazing.
I wanna connect that insight to where we are broadly in the development of AI in the world, because I think there's an important technology insight there. I also think there's an important organizational insight about unions, and that I share, by the way, as a student, not as an expert, and also about our country as a whole. So where we are with AI generally is we're in the rickety bicycle phase, which is to say people often say, oh, I tried to use AI and it didn't work. And it's like, yeah, you got on the rickety bicycle, you didn't know how to ride it, and you fell over. And so you got to keep trying and figuring it out. And so we're at the stage where deep immersion produces the beautiful insights that come from intuition and expertise when they come together. And so I'm excited for much more of that. And it's why I believe that a partnership like this can actually be an accelerant to the best uses of AI, because it accelerates the process of trial and error and discovery. And we need that as a world. We need that. Second insight I have is about who drives where the value is in these kinds of collaborations. I, became more involved with the labor movement really only 5 years ago. I had some realizations after the 2020 election about democratic participation. I'd been involved in this body, the California Governor's Future of Work Commission, that had several labor leaders on it, was chaired by Mary Kay Henry. And the light bulb went off in my head, not, oh, to be a good society, we should work with unions, although of course that may also be true, but more that if we want to have a productive economy and society, by productive, I don't mean just economically productive. I mean functional, healthy, delivers all our needs. We just need stronger, bigger unions and more collaboration between them and business. And so, but my big missing learning from the first few years that this center has again underlined for me is when we read about unions as readers in the public, we tend to focus on the heads of the national and international labor unions, because that's who represents those unions often to the public. But the real action is at the locals. And I see that as a member of, my UCAFT local. That's where the democracy happens. That's where the power is. That's where the wisdom lies. That's where the members are. And so for me, it's been a reminder of just paying attention for all your listeners and viewers to let's not get distracted by remembering that the local is kind of the core unit here. And I share that again, not as an expert, but as a student. The third thing I'd say is for our society.
I would also say, Roy, that the democracy, like in our conventions and whatever, we try to practice the democracy there too.
It bubbles up
it
from
is
that.
it is so primal at the local level.
Yeah. I'm not saying that it doesn't, of course, happen, but what I saw when I attended the last convention was many of the resolutions coming up out of the locals, not all of them, but that kind of nested set of institutions in dialogue with each other. And the last thing I just want to get at, not to overgeneralize too much, is the risk of fascism and societal collapse that, depending who you are, you may think that is a high risk thing or not a risky thing. But regardless of what you think about how risky it is very clear from looking at the history of other countries that it is the fabric of civil society, more than the courts, more than the military, more than the law, that is the ultimate safeguard. And that to me means vigorous participation by business, vigorous participation by organized labor, vigorous participation by faith, by philanthropy and nonprofit organizations. And so without exaggeration, I think institutional partnerships that bring parties together to form relationships that they may not otherwise have deepened. They had them already, but they may not have deepened, are a big part of just the resilience of our society and democracy. And so that's the other piece that I see here. And teachers, of course, Randy has now written a book on this, but teachers are not like any other occupation. They have a special role to play that accountants do not.
Hey, I'm Carlos Sotomayor. I'm the president of Unite Here Local 26, and I'm here to let everyone know that you should go and you should subscribe now to Power at Work.
State Representative Christopher Worrell. Make sure you subscribe to Power at Work.
Hi, I'm John Merrick. I'm 83 years old, retired from the Fairmont Copley Plaza for 7 years, where I was a bartender and a server. And I want to recommend and support Power at Work, and I suggest that people, especially working people, subscribe to its mission.
We are talking with President Randi Weingarten of the American Federation of Teachers and Roy Bahat of Bloomberg Beta about a new AI teacher training partnership between the AFT, the UFT, United Federation of Teachers, and 3 artificial intelligence companies. So, Randy, I want to pick up on a point that you made a little bit earlier about how the extent to which the AI training that goes on at the National Academy actually results in teachers teaching students about how to use AI is going to be decided by teachers, by school boards, by principals. So I know I'm preaching to the choir when I say this, but one way to direct AI generated innovation and also to limit AI generated disruption and to maximize the value of AI in any workplace, including a school, is through collective bargaining. I know you know that, you've preached that. And the leading examples in the public's mind, I think, are the Hollywood unions, SAG-AFTRA and IATSE and the Writers Guild, who had this epic strike that they won. And one of the big issues there was how AI was going to be used in the process of making movies and television shows and video games and other things. So let's talk a little bit about how the AFT and maybe the UFT is involved in this as well. Or I don't know if it's come up in New York City in a lot of detail, but how is the AFT approaching AI in collective bargaining with school districts around the country? And how, if at all, does the National Academy inform the approach that you're going to be taking to collective bargaining over AI?
So I'm so glad you asked that question. And I think that in my answer, people will think, oh, did they plan this question? I mean, so this summer, what we did was we did something that we've never done before. We put 3 major conventions and meetings and education meetings together, one after the other. And so, part of it is so many schools start so early these days, K-12, that you really only have July. So many, like New York City ends the end of June. Uh, uh, Schools in the South, schools in LA start the first 2 weeks of August. So you really only have July to do a bunch of these things. So we put what conferences do we put together? Collective bargaining, our big conference of collective bargaining, oversubscribed. Our big symposium on AI, oversubscribed. And our general Teach conference, which we do every other year, which is a big professional development conference, oversubscribed with a lot of work in collective bargaining and in AI. Who was one of our speakers in our collective bargaining conference? The negotiator of the SAG-AFTRA deal. We are, as I said, we are a federation. I don't hold any of the bargaining certificates. And as the president of the UFT, but for 10, 12 years, there is a huge difference when you hold the bargaining certificates versus when you don't, when you are the bargainer in chief versus not. So part of this is we're creating, not just education about how to use collective bargaining in terms of not just job preservation or training, but safeguards and innovation and all the terms and conditions around AI. That even though the boss will say, "Oh no, it's permissive subjects of bargaining," and we will say, "No, it is not permissive subject." So all of that stuff, but also the power to actually get to a bargained agreement on any of these issues when the boss wants to preserve as much discretion as possible, as much authority as possible, and also things change so quickly that frankly nobody can anticipate, that nobody even we can anticipate that things are going to change, but you don't know what it looks like. And that was a key in the SAG-AFTRA deal, and it's a key for the writers and for higher education. So we are working. So the key for this year was just like with AI itself, what are the prompts? What are the questions? And do you have the power to actually force some fairness in terms of using collective bargaining to do that? And these conversations happened in each of these different conferences. And it was really pretty amazing how similar the questions were. But in some ways, just like almost any other major change, you have to, as a union, have enough power to actually have a real bargain for agreement on that. And for many educators and education unions, I mean, separate and apart from a Scott Walker who took away collective bargaining, how do you have, without the right to strike, and I'm not advocating for a strike, how do you have the power? So we're having this in terms of nurses, we're having this in terms of teachers, we're having this in terms of public employees. And so I go back to number one is if people are not AI literate, if they don't have a literacy about a digital literacy about this, they don't even know the questions to ask or how to get to the next step of what is it. Like, even if you, this is the last thing I'll say about this, even if you had the greatest model language and you plopped it down, and you could plop it down in every single one of these bargain for agreements, if people are not literate or and have the efficacy about how to use it, how to recognize it, what to do, then that provision would just sit there and not do nothing, not do anything.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. So, Roy, my guess is that you get a lot of calls from a lot of people about a lot of potential deals, right? Sort of the business that you're in. And since you're one of the few prominent, I'm going to call you a pro-union venture capitalist. You may or may not like that label, but my guess is that
I have
you
a
are an
nuanced
early
view on that label, so
I'll bet you do. I'll bet you do. One of the nice things about being me is I don't have to be nuanced. People have given up on that with me. But my guess is that you are an early call for anyone looking to do a deal that involves labor, at least a deal in the venture space. And you actually referenced this a little bit earlier. You didn't say that there was a particular deal that you were working on, but you said you hoped that this would be a model for future deals. Maybe not a national academy, but this kind of partnership coming together where there's mutual interest, mutual value, mutual shared values with respect to how a technology is going to be used. Okay, so let me just say, I don't want you to announce anything that's not ready to be announced, although we're not afraid to make news on Power at Work. Do you expect that this announcement of the National Academy and the deal between the three AI companies, the AFT and the UFT, might spur some discussions about other deals? What's the buzz in your world about this deal in particular and the opportunity that it creates maybe to have additional deals like it?
Yeah. So first, let me say the kind of thing I do for a living is rarely something that starts on third base the way this has with so many strong partners. Most of the things I do for a living is two people who have an idea for something and need a little bit of money to prove it out. Some of it can turn out to be really profound. I mean, for example, one of our AI companies that's relevant to education is a company called Replit, Replit. And it's what's called now vibe coding. You can go and type in, I want a website that does X, and then it just starts making it. Now, you still learn things because you have to oversee what that AI is doing, but that started out largely used in schools. And so things evolve from those early stages, and I have a lot of respect for how things can get big very fast. OpenAI, one of my partners, was on one of their early formation boards, ... There is not much buzz, realistically, in the tech world about this. I just want to be really blunt about it. And I think part of that is because the tech world has not paid great attention to the power of unions. And, Microsoft has been really forward thinking and rare here, not alone, but rare. And so my view of how this will be, which is the right way, is the announcement itself probably shouldn't inspire that many people to things. It's like, okay, cool. We said we're going to do something. The thing that should be inspirational is when it works, when they hear about that special ed example of doing the read-alongs, when they discover that there's some new way to train people and then they organize more effectively. So I want the proof to be in the pudding. And now we have to figure out who do we enlist in this. Where there has, by the way, been interest is people who are deep experts in AI wanting to be involved, wanting to learn, wanting to participate. Obviously, some of them want to sell their services, ... So that's kind of my mental model here is forget about what people announce, what people respond to the announcement. We want them responding to what actually happens. And Rob Weil, who is, the staffer Randy mentioned who's been building this, his ability to bring it to life is going to be the thing that inspires people. So that's one. The thing I just say about the attitude toward unions generally, most people in business, it's not actually that they're anti-union. It's worse than that. I don't even think about it. I mean, I remember I had somebody involved in the Amazon organizing who I invited to come speak because I'll often invite union people to come speak at business conferences. He came to a Fortune conference and he presented on what presented. You had a discussion about what he's doing. And afterwards, somebody walked up to me. And by the way, the number of times where a CEO says to me, they were unionizing in my workplace and I had to Google what is a union is not small. But this guy came up to me, and the guy who came up to me had been an executive in tech for many years. He's what I think we would all call a good guy, civically engaged, heart in the right place, blah, blah, blah. And he said, okay, explain this to me. Amazon has Amazon Fresh. It has Amazon Prime. Where does Amazon Labor Union fit in? And I was like, no. The Amazon Labor Union is not a product line of Amazon. And he just didn't, it took him a while to get it. And so mostly what I want is for people in the business world, for the light bulb to go off in their head that there's a possibility here, that this is important, and that there's forms of labor organizing other than unions that can also be valuable. I mean, in our Aspen Business Roundtable, which is a membership club of business leaders who want to collaborate in new ways with organized labor, some of it is not union stuff. Some of it is we elected a worker-elected board representative. And my view is let all the experiments run, all the things happen, we figure it out together as to what works. And so when you say, am I pro-union? I'll say, if you define pro-union as meaning unions are important, deserve to be more than they are, and can be essential in creating a productive, healthy economy and society, then I'm pro-union. If by pro-union, which by the way, for a lot of my colleagues in business, it's like, okay, that's way too much. Even the possibility unions could be good.
For them, you just declared your membership in the Communist Party.
That's it. And but look, I just don't see it that way. If pro-union means I therefore think everything every union does is good, no, I do not believe that. In fact, everybody I know who's a union leader doesn't even think that, even if they can't say it, all the time. And solidarity is a powerful force and ... And so I think I'm pro-union in the way I'm pro-restaurant. I think restaurants are really important to our society. I think they should exist. I think everybody should know about them. Some serve good meals and some don't. Some go through a bad spot and some don't. But, I'm not trying to minimize a union, but I'm trying to say, to me, it's like that. It's like, are you pro or against? Am I pro or against the internet? It's important. It can do good things and bad things. We got to engage.
I think that's a pretty good definition. Go ahead, Randy.
Let me
I'm
just
sorry.
answer in a different way than Roy, not about pro-union versus not. Obviously, I do think that there are three ways nationally, societally, that we actually create power for working people in America. One is through elections. That's obvious. Who you vote for, who you elect. One is through education. I think that's obvious, giving kids the skills and knowledge they need to thrive. And the third is in the economy, since most of us were not born with a silver spoon in our mouths, it is through the collective organization that tries to create power, economic power for people, and that's basically a union. So there is a societal importance and unions are really popular these days as America has less and less and less of a middle class. But in this instance, I think that what the administration has done has been terrible and has put a damper on it, things, which is that they have they have announced they want AI in schools. Have they talked to one teacher? No. Have they talked to a union? No. what they're doing is they're doing exactly what, employers a long time ago did, trying to run around the workers. You cannot implement anything effectively with children if you don't work with those children's teachers. But because they are so antithetical to teacher unions, because they want teacher unions dead, and because they don't actually, not only do they not care about public education, I think they want to abandon it. Just this week, they have a big dinner with all these tech guys. Do they have one union there? You tell me another innovation that is like what we just did in tech. Nothing. Do they have anybody? No, because it's the same kind of, we're going to impose it from on high. And the ed tech industry understands how stupid that is and how it doesn't work. But so if you're one of these tech guys, the administration is saying, oh, come to us, do it with us, and we'll do surveillance, we'll do this, we'll do that. You don't have to work with them. So I actually give Microsoft and OpenAI and Anthropic a lot of credit, because they're like, no, we understand for our business model and for actually being effective over the long term, that's what we have to do. But this administration is giving them a totally different view, that they can go around teachers, impose it, and not only will it not work, I mean, the surveillance state may work, autocracy may work, we may lose our democracy, but yes, you can hear the sarcasm dripping out of my mouth, but it's certainly not an education strategy.
I've never heard sarcasm drip out of your mouth even once, but I don't want to end. Let me just say, we cannot end this extremely upbeat blogcast on a negative note, talking about the union buster in chief. So, Randi, you have written and published a book, which I know you have a copy of, and I want you to give us a few minutes on the book and what you're arguing and where people can find it and buy it. I don't want them to go to Amazon to get it. I want them to get it at an independent bookseller. Tell us about the book.
So, thank you, Seth. And look, this book is coming out next week. You can still pre-order it. There's Bookshop. There's not just Amazon. I have to, even though I have the same feeling as you do. My publisher says I cannot be discriminatory in who I mention.
So I will. I'll do it. I'll do it
So
for both
you
of
can
us.
do it
I'll
for
do it
me.
for
I
both of
can't.
us.
But there's a bunch of different places: Barnes and Nobles, Bookshop, your independent bookseller. In fact, I'm doing a bunch of these small events with independent bookstores because I want to help support their small businesses. It comes out next week. You can pre-order it still now. But what I tried to do is two things. I tried to identify the fascistic behavior, the authoritarian behavior that is going on now in the United States. And so people see what it is, and they can identify it. Because frankly, we don't teach a lot about fascism and authoritarianism and other types and other kinds of democratic backsliding in the United States. We felt like we were, this happened to other people, not to us. And so I don't label anybody in particular as a fascist, because I don't want the debate about is he or isn't he. But I talk about fascistic behavior and what is happening with the us versus them, the division, the demonization, the dehumanization, the slurs that happen to teachers, that happen to that happen when somebody disagrees, with what a Jamie Raskin is doing, or with what a Hillary Clinton is doing, or taking away their secret service, like Kamala Harris as she's going on a book tour. I mean, this kind of demonization, dehumanization, and why, as Ruth Ben-Ghiat and others talk about, because it's an allegiance to the strong man as opposed to an allegiance to a constitution or democracy. But you have to start with dividing and demonizing, which is what so often happens in public schools. And then the second thing is why fascists fear teachers, not why teachers fear fascists. Because who is the antidote? What do teachers do to help kids thrive? Critical thinking, creating. What did the founders and the framers say so many years ago about what was essential to stop tyrants: critical thinking, education, being able to think for yourselves. Second, what is essential in a diverse society with lots of different people? Creating a safe and welcoming environment where people tolerate each other, where they understand each other, as opposed to rewriting history and saying, let's get rid of diversity, inclusion, and equity. How do you create that? That's what teachers do. Third, teachers are about the all. We're not about the some. We are about helping all kids learn. All kids have opportunity. And the fourth, and this is the fourth reason why, and this goes full circle to what we're talking about right now. What is the fourth reason why fascists fear teachers? Teachers are right now, today in America, the most densely unionized profession. Most. And they're also disproportionately female. So to create some power for teachers who may not otherwise have any, fascists want to control all the levers of opportunity in America. What are the three levers that regular people have? Elections. Look at what Donald Trump is trying to do about those. Labor, education. So we are the antidote, but I wanted to write it in the, you know, in with stories about teachers who every single day, regardless of what is happening, regardless of the smears, regardless of lack of resources, what are teachers doing every single day? They're trying to help kids have the tools and knowledge they need for them to thrive. So it's a love letter to teachers, not just an analysis of fascistic behavior.
President Randi Weingarten of the AFT, Roy Bahat from Bloomberg Beta. Thank you again for joining us on Power at Work for this fantastic discussion. I will just say I used fewer questions from my notes in this blogcast than in any other blogcast we've done over 3 years. And it was a better conversation. So thank you so much.
To be here, and honestly honored to have played any supporting role in this effort, and onward and upward.
You were fantastic, Roy. Thank you for all the work and all the help and all the guidance that you have done thus far.
Not to promote other media, but just the thing to make sure to get in, if you need to cut it, you can cut it, is Randi also made Time's list of the 100 most influential people in the world on artificial intelligence. And I think having a union leader on that list is one of the important symbols of where the locus of innovation needs to land.
That's a great place to end. Thank you so much to both of you. I will be right back with a few comments in just a moment. Hey, thanks very much for sticking with us to the end of this blogcast. Let me start with go buy Randi Weingarten's book. If you're watching this the first day that it is published, it's still going to be available for pre-order, but it should be out very, very soon. And also look for Randi at an independent bookseller near you. She's going to be doing a little bit of a book tour. I think a very important contribution, and I really encourage you to take a look. We need to talk more about fascism and what it is, how it works, and how to fight back against it. And that's what Randi's book does. But the main topic of this blogcast was artificial intelligence and this important partnership between the AFT, the UFT, and these three leading American artificial intelligence companies. You can tell I'm enthusiastic about it. Look, I know that artificial intelligence is controversial, and I'm very proud of the fact that Power at Work has published a leading number of articles and posts and blogcasts about artificial intelligence and worker power, artificial intelligence and unions. We're very proud of that fact because it is such a critically important issue and a deeply controversial issue, and an issue that has potentially huge ramifications for working people and for worker power. Tremendous. But it doesn't just point in a negative direction. It is not exclusively about job loss and job disruption. It is not just about, whether or not these AI companies are stealing information or using it, providing tools that surveil workers. All of that is real and important, and we did a blogcast about that with the two leaders of two state AFL-CIO federations of labor and their efforts to lead on policies that would address the negative applications of AI. But here we have a partnership, an unexpected, surprising partnership that can use AI for good. If you can improve the education of students using AI, why wouldn't you want to do that? Even given all the negative applications of AI that we worry about and should worry about. And AI is not perfect, for goodness sakes. It's rapidly developing, but we use it at the Burns Center, and we teach about it at the Burns Center extensively. It is not a perfect tool. That's why you have to keep a human in the loop. And that's the value of having teachers using it, because with a human in the loop, you can address those errors, address the hallucinations, address the mistakes, and use AI in a constructive way. I thought the story that Randy told about special ed teachers using AI, immensely powerful. Imagine dozens more of those kinds of applications. Dozens more. Students learn in many different styles, right? Howard Gardner very famously said there are 7 ways in which people learn, 7 learning styles for people, different people, right? If AI can help to address the gaps in learning styles, because let's be honest, the old system that was the system that I used when I first started teaching law back in 2000, which is you stand in front of a room, you show people slides on a screen or a blackboard full of stuff, and you lecture at them. Maybe you ask them some questions, get them engaged in the dialogue. That can be helpful. Some students really take to that. Does every student? You know better. You have been one of those students who sat in those classrooms and tapped your pen or banged your head against the extremely small desk because it was not the right learning style for you. Well, if AI can diversify that, if it can deliver information, if it can create additional tools, let's use every tool available, because there's nothing more important in our society than education, with the possible exception of democracy. So, and economic justice. I don't want to leave out economic justice, extremely important. But education is a tool to get to democracy, and it's a tool to get to economic justice. So, really proud to have been able to present this blogcast to you, proud to have been able to reintroduce you to President Randi Weingarten and introduce you to Roy Bahat, who is a really interesting guy, right? I called him a pro-union venture capitalist, and that gave him an opportunity to launch into an extensive discussion about what that means. I thought that was really intriguing. I'd be curious to know what you think about what a pro-union venture capitalist is. I thought he gave a pretty good definition. But I was really, really glad we could bring this to you today. All right, we're available to you. Power at Work is available to you on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, X, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. You can find all our blogcasts right here on poweratwork.us, but also on YouTube on the Burns Center for Social Change channel. So you can watch all of the blogcasts here or listen to the podcast of the blogcasts here, or here on the poweratwork.us, or on your favorite podcast provider, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast. Or you can go to YouTube and look at the Burns Center for Social Change channel. All of the blogcasts are there as well in video form. But the best and most important way you can connect to Power at Work is to subscribe. Go to poweratwork.us. A subscription box will pop up. Give us your name. Give us your email address. We absolutely promise you, we will not sell or give away that information to anyone. We're just going to use it to provide you with updates on the content that we provide on Power at Work, and to send you the weekly download, which is a collection of a couple of dozen things from across the internet that we think you'll find interesting about worker power unions and worker collective action. Let me just say, if the subscription box doesn't pop up, go to the bottom of the front page. It's there as well. There's no excuse for not subscribing. If you like this content, if you watch this content, if you benefit from this content, even if you don't benefit from it, you just find it entertaining, or you like to count the number of times I flub in these introductions and outroductions, please subscribe to Power at Work. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you again on Power at Work very soon.
Public professionals, would you like to learn how data, digital innovation, and AI skills can improve your work and help you serve your constituents better? The answer is Innovate US. Innovate US offers no-cost learning on the skills you need to succeed in government in the 21st century. Attend a 1-hour weekly workshop or enroll in a course on AI or human-centered design at your own pace. It's all free to you. Visit innovate-us.org today to learn more and sign up. That's Innovate-US. Visit right now.